Melbourne. It's Colonel Steve here at the ABV Barrel Shop. This is my place in Arnold, Missouri, a St. Louis suburb. We are the home of single barrels, so come by and check us out. If you happen to be in St. Louis, it would be a crime if you didn't come here and enjoy some time tasting through some of our bottles. We've got over 60 that are open at any given time where we've got various single barrels, and there's always new ones coming in too. So you might be sitting here at the tasting bar trying some stuff that we've got. Next thing you know, here comes a truck and we've got new bottles coming in. So worth coming to. Love to have you here and join me and sit on the other side of the bar and I'll pour you some samples. Unless Darren's here, and then he'll pour you the samples and I'll sit on that side of the bar with you and we'll just hang out and drink a few. Sounds good? Sounds good to me. So we wanted to talk today a little bit about when was the moment that I knew I had made it in the bourbon industry. Quote unquote, making it is so subjective that there's not necessarily a specific moment in time when you can say that's the moment. If you invent a product, the day that it actually works and is up and running, that's the day that that product was invented. Making it in an industry, that's a little subjective. It's up in the air. Maybe it might be a year, 2016 or 2017. That was the year that I made it. But in my case, it really comes down to an individual date. And let me tell you about this thing, because this was really one of my best days in the bourbon industry for sure. So I had been podcasting a while and stuff like that. I had left my corporate job, been gone from that for over a year at this point. And I had this, mantra from my wife where, you're going to make it until your unemployment runs out, or you're going to have to go to work and get a job somewhere. So I was trying to work my way into the bourbon industry, spending a lot of time in Kentucky, going back and forth, staying at Bourbon's Bistro or staying at Royce Neely's place, Neely Family Distillery, trying to save money so I could extend the amount of cash that I had to allow me to continue for as long as I could to try to make my way into the bourbon industry. So we get to a point where I have an interview set up with Jimmy Russell. This is a pretty good moment by itself, right? So Jimmy Russell was scheduled to be interviewed, was told to come to Wild Turkey and go there. So of course, you go to the visitor center. I mean, you go meet Jimmy at Wild Turkey. I assume it's going to be at the visitor center. Where else could I go? Every other place is kind of blocked off, but I get in there and they're like, no, you got to go to the offices. So get in the car. It was Jeremy Shell and I, my co-host, still co-host on the Bourbon Show. And so we get in the car and we go over to the place where we were told to go and check in. And of course, there's like a reception desk there and they say, have a seat. And we think, okay, well, at some point, some sort of handler, marketing person, PR person, someone's going to come out and get us, and then we'll go see Jimmy. And we sit there for a little while, and then the person comes back and says, okay, Jimmy's ready for you. Go on up these steps, and then 2 doors on the left, there's a conference room. You can go there. And so we start heading up there, and as we get to, we're thinking, again, we're going to go meet a PR person or something like that. We get up the stairs, we start heading that way, and who's there? Jimmy Russell. And he's like, hey, come on back here. Forget that. Come on back here to my office. So we go sit in Jimmy Russell's office. And there's no one else there. It's just Jeremy, me, and Jimmy Russell. I set up this podcasting equipment. We do the interview, fantastic interview, talk about his career, his life in bourbon, all kinds of cool stuff. That's worth listening to. I'll try to remember to put a link to that interview in the description of this particular video. And so we have a great time. And I think it's a really good show. And I thought this is pretty darn important. So, talking to Jimmy Russell, it's amazing because I always get into this thing of, man, he started in 1954 at Wild Turkey. Think about the old timers that were helping him out. They might have been distilling even in the 1800s or something like that. As you're talking to Jimmy Russell, you're one level removed from a distiller of the 1800s. Think about that. That's crazy. And, he knows so much. We were wowed at what he knows, and he literally knows everything. So, but the cameras turn off, the podcasting thing is over, we're done, and then Jimmy still wants to chat. So we're not going to leave, we're just going to chat. We'll talk with Jimmy as long as he's going to allow us to sit in those 2 chairs right across from his desk and talk to him. And we get to talking and stuff like that. And I say to Jimmy at some point, I said, that video you did with Matthew McConaughey was pretty cool. McConaughey had just started as a spokesperson. He's no longer that, but at that time he was just getting going, spokesperson for Wild Turkey. And I said, I watched that video where you were in, and you guys were sitting in the same office. Matthew McConaughey was sitting where I'm sitting right now, and you pulled out this bottle of old whiskey that was pre-prohibition, that was made at the distillery that we're at today, and you let him give a taste of that. He's like, yeah, that was a great video. He opens his desk drawer, pulls out a bottle, says, you mean this bottle right here? This isn't that bad. This is just a prop, but he says, this bottle right here, and I was like, yeah, that's the bottle. I kick Jeremy underneath the desk there, so Jimmy couldn't see, but I was like, this might happen. And Jimmy didn't let us drink from that. He showed it to us. We got to hold it. I held the pre-prohibition era whiskey, and then he put it back in his desk. No taste of it, but it was still cool. What an experience. So we spent at least, hour and a half, 2 hours just shooting the breeze with Jimmy after the interview was over. So it was like an hour with the interview and then another, couple hours just talking to him. What an amazing day. Was that the day I made it? It's the start of the day that I made it. So during the conversation, another thing that happened was Jeremy had snuck in a bottle of Wild Turkey, a vintage bottle. And he hands it to Jimmy and says, sir, could you help me know how old this is? I don't know how old this bottle is. And Jimmy grabs it, looks at it, flips it around, and he tells him the date, the time, the hour, and the minute that it was made. There's literally like a code on there that makes no sense to anybody who's not in the business or anything like that. Jimmy knew how to read the code, and he knew the minute that bottle had been made. So that was pretty cool. So Jeremy had an answer to what that bottle was, and I think if Jimmy was interested, we would have cracked it that day, but he didn't seem like he wanted to sit there and drink with us or anything, but that's cool. So Jeremy puts it back in the bag that he had muled that up there, and then we leave and we go to Bourbon's Bistro to celebrate afterwards. So we interviewed the great Jimmy Russell. We're like, we're going to Bourbon's Bistro, greatest bourbon bar in the world. And we get there and we start having a few drinks and telling these stories at the bar, and Bronner was like, get a couple tables. So he has his staff take a couple tables outside, and then we sat outside Bourbon's Bistro like it was the Sopranos outside the pork store. Remember those things? They'd be sitting, remember how cool that was? It'd be like they own the world. They're sitting in front of here they are, these gangsters and stuff like that, all the stuff that they do, and they're just sitting out there in the public, just drinking coffee, chatting, shooting the breeze, having a few laughs, and that's what we were doing. I felt like we owned the world that day. Like Louisville, Kentucky, we were at the epicenter, because I had, Andrew Webrink was there from Independent Stave. John Carlos White publishes a travel magazine in Louisville, Kentucky. And me and Jason and Jeremy, and we're sitting there drinking that old Wild Turkey. And before you know it, Jason's having such a good time. He goes get some 1956 Old Fitzgerald. So we're drinking like this stuff just out on the street. People are looking like, who are these guys? What are they doing? They got these old bottles they're drinking from and all this stuff. So it was really a cool, amazing, special day, one that I'll never forget. And to me, all the stuff that happened in that one day, from a guy from St. Louis who never had really met anybody from the bourbon industry other than a couple people at a liquor store that came through on promotional tours, to spend that sort of time with some icons of the industry, to sipping some really old, great whiskey outside of Bourbon's Bistro, one of them was made by the guy that we had talked to that day, Jimmy Russell. It was an amazing story, and what a moment in time where I was like, I made it. I'm in the bourbon business here, and never look back. No more corporate jobs for me. I'm keeping the long beard and wearing the hat and sunglasses and all the stuff that makes Colonel Steve. I'm sticking with it. I'm never going back to the corporate world again. I love this industry, and I love the way that people have been open to me coming in and talking to them, and it's just really fun. But that was a very special day, a moment where I finally realized something special's happening here. So there you go. There's about the day that I knew I had made it in the bourbon industry.